Welcome to Definitely Maybe Agile, the podcast where Peter Madison and David Sherrock discuss the complexities of adopting new ways of working at scale. Hello, Dave. How are you today?
We're doing very well. So enjoying, having got back from Toronto, I'm enjoying finding the weather's just a little cooler and that you inherited some rain, if I'm honest.
I'm actually kind of glad for it because it's been very, very, very hot here. So what are we talking about today?
Taking safe bet. I think this is it's a bit of an oxymoron, isn't it?
Yeah, it's one of these things where as we often see in organizations, they take a certain approach to problems because it makes it feel like it's going to be a safe bet. Like if we just do this, it's going to be the easy way to do it. It's going to be safe. We're not going to have any problems. We're not going to lose. It's all going to work. We're going to win.
Well, and I think this has so much to do with our sort of a very human comfort level with stability, predictable, safe solutions, ways forward, whatever it might be. And we've briefly talked about the explore versus exploit side of things around complex problems and knowing when to go and explore and try things out and find new opportunities versus take the opportunities we have in front of us and invest in those and sort of maximize the return that we can get from those opportunities. And it feels like there's a sort of a sea change from away from that exploit side of the equation, much more into the explore, driven by the pace of change, technology doing what it's doing, geopolitics doing what it's doing. A lot of different things are kind of driving towards a need to explore much more than there is an opportunity just to sort of sit and reap the benefits of the work we've done in the past.
Well, and I think technology has had a big impact on it too. We've now got capabilities we didn't have before that allow us to rapidly accelerate creating prototypes and creating experiments that we can put in front of customers and lots of things like that we just didn't have the capability to do them as easily as we do now. And I think that might have something to do with that too, because exploration becomes much easier when you've got the tools to be able to explore much more easily. So that's, I think, definitely a part of it as well.
But exactly to your point, now if we have better tools at our fingertips, the sort of environment is shifting, so exploring is more required, let's say, or is more beneficial. It's something that's very valuable. However, we don't necessarily have the mental muscle to be able to explore because it means experiments, it means trying things out, and crucially, it means not everything will work. And this is where that whole safe bet conversation comes in because so many organizations, so many executives are either going to interpret things as safe bets, therefore, because there's no risk or there's very little risk in this particular direction, we should chase that. Or they just only feel comfortable if there is a bet and it's a safe bet and that's the way we should go. And there's that lack of comfort with uncertainty.
Yeah, and I wonder as well about when we think about technology has been learning how to experiment for the last couple of decades, like Agile methodology, bringing in the concepts that we know and which work very well in that exploration space. Quite often we've still got the situations that from a business delivering a service to a customer perspective, the customer, be it say advisors or mortgage brokers or whomever who might be the recipient of the software that you are developing. From the business side, they can be very nervous about, well, we don't want to change everything. If it isn't perfect before we give it to them, then I'm going to have to deal with all the consequences of that. So
what if we upset our brokers? What if we upset our customers with something? And the headache with it is I'm saying it's a solved problem is probably being a bit cheeky, but there are certainly some really great practices that allow us to segment that audience, to test it with a subset to limit the potential of disruption because we annoy a group of brokers or a group of users or whatever it is. So we can start looking at that in a very careful way. However, what we often see is either on the business side or even in the IT delivery side, there isn't the ability to just be able to go and really build that continuously. It's a one-off thing, or they'll do it occasionally, but not for everything.
Yeah, and that is a common piece I see is that well, it's going to take us 12 months to roll out this new version of the portal. And it has to be 12 months because it's going to take us that long to do every one of the changes and do all the testing and validate it works. And it has to be perfect before we give it to the client. Versus, as you were saying, one way to do it is to say, okay, we'll find a subset of the customer base, and we'll say, okay, these are the very engaged customers who we can work with very closely. We can introduce an early prototype of this to them, learn how it should work, and see if what we can use to modify the future growth, or test it with them first so that we're not waiting 12 months to find out that, well, actually, that it's not what they wanted at all.
Yeah. I mean, if I can just pull the conversation back just a tad towards where we were talking about how to evaluate experiments and things like that, because that adds to what you're saying, is there's a couple of things that just jump to mind. One is the culture that you're working in really has to be comfortable with seeing an experiment go wrong.
Yes.
And I think when we talk about that safe bets, there's a mindset around we only want safe bets. Therefore, another way of saying that is we only want things to go successfully. And what the reality is, things don't go successfully all the time, but we need to understand how an organization responds or what their sort of antibodies are when something goes wrong.
Yes, yeah, and I think that is a key part of it too. Is like, are we really going to be accepting of something that doesn't go well? There's also, like, one of the pieces I've seen frequently is the customer segmentation isn't the only way that you can potentially divide up what it is you're going to change about the solution. It partly depends whether there's a solution out there already. But you can start to think about it as to, well, what are the biggest pain points of the customer? What are the things I should be solving for? How do I start to prioritize those? How else might I be able to slice this very large piece of work into smaller pieces based on risks or features or capabilities or other things that I can slowly more introduce to the customer without having to wait for absolutely everything to be finished before I do so.
And that absolutely everything to be finished, but it comes, what I've seen a lot is we're replacing this system. We need all the same functionality in the new system. Or another one that I'm just coming across quite a lot right now, which is we're trying to catch up with or get ahead of our competitors. So we want to have feature parity with our competitors. And that's almost considered a safe bet, because if it's good for our competitors, it must be good for our customers. And it's like,
Yeah.
that's a weird investment strategy to take, I think, because what we really want to do is, what is it we bring to the table that our competitors don't? How do we differentiate? So instead of wasting my time building like for like with our competitors, so now they can't differentiate. If we understand what our target audience is and how we make their life better, we can ignore the competitors because we're targeting this very unique subset.
Yeah, and I find that what you're describing there is often what organizations do that ends up diluting their value offering because they end up chasing after the wrong thing. Your competitor's customer may not look like your customer, at least not exactly. So you've really got to truly understand your customer and that persona to know, like, who are we building this for? Now, if it turns out when you look at your customer that you've got exactly the same customer, then yeah, maybe you want to build some similar features. But there's also well, is there something we can do to differentiate? Is there something that customer might want more than what our competitor thinks they want? So
I think it's really, I kind of love squirreling around this particular topic because so many organizations right now are chasing that shift to digital customers, digital servicing, that whole digital first experience. And so much of it is take what's effectively an offline experience and turn it into a digital experience. But there are customers who love the offline experience. And if we just assume all of them want to go digital, there's some loss there. There's something going on. But also there are whole groups of other customers that might be open to using a digital first offering. But you don't have those conversations. It seems to be much more about we have to save costs by moving all of this into a digital experience. And then we've got the value and away we go. And I think it's harder to get that deeper conversation.
Yeah. And another mistake that we see organizations doing, of course, is that they move it into the digital experience, but they totally replicate the physical experience, and it sucks because they miss out all the opportunities of actually having a digital experience, which is quite a different user experience and different interface as well.
Well, it can be, right? It can be this really, actually, it can be a very, very powerful experience if we really understand that customer side.
Yeah.
But because it's a virtual world, a remote sort of digital experience, we really do need to experiment with it because it's not something that we can just intuitively understand.
Yeah. So yeah, this brings us back around to there is no more safe bets. Like there is you can't
Yeah.
say, okay, I'm going to understand what I need to do to service that customer and provide them what they're looking for. I'm going to do what my competitors are doing. It's going to take me 12 months to do that. Let's kick off that and start working towards that. And 12 months from now, I can potentially go back and measure whether or not that worked. Although that's maybe another topic for another time, that 12 months later, nobody actually ever goes back and looks to see whether or not
Yeah.
this was what we were hoping to get. Because that's the other problem too, right? It's too long a time lag.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like after 12 months, everyone's forgotten why we even started on this journey. And because 12 months often turns into 18, and at that point you're just
Well,
totally.
and one of I mean, just picking up a little bit around that as well. When we talk about experiments and bets, even if we have a safe bet in the sense that it's obvious this is going to work and we go ahead and make that change and it proves to be correct, one of the things that we're bumping into right now is, if you remember years ago, we talked about business agility and that integration, and that's really, across
Mhm.
IT and business and so on. And that's sort of no longer in vogue.
Yeah.
However, it's now more important than ever, if that makes sense. So when we're working with an organization, you see this wonderful opportunity, it clearly gives a return, and then you bang into another division or part of that journey, like the business and how they get new features out to their brokers and how they incentivize them, and you find that that whole process takes so long that you're not able to leverage this great opportunity you've seen because we can only see it in the digital space and we can't actually get it out into the broader organization.
Yeah, and I look at that as something of that alignment problem across the organization, where the business side is working on one cadence of delivery, and the technologies, even if you've built the best engine in the world that can build and experiment and learn and do all the things we need to do, if the rest of the organization is operating in a different paradigm, then it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
fact, you're probably in those situations might be better off just saying, okay, technology, you go off and do your stuff for other customers, and we'll just offshore ours to somebody who can operate at the speed we want.
I'm not. I'm feeling like I should say you can't say that.
I'm not recommending that, but I'm just saying
I
that.
was I was going to say drop us an email and you go and talk to them a little bit and figure out help them find a solution to the problem we're describing.
Oh, I am sure. Well, I know I've spoken to IT leaders over the years, and that's definitely a conversation that's come up in the past.
Couple of key takeaways.
I think one is the understanding that we do have to experiment and we do have to learn and we do have to figure out how we measure that. Shorter time cycles are critical. And even when something is labeled as a safe bet, it's not going to be a safe bet. You need to figure out how to break that down into a smaller piece so you can learn whether or not you're going in the right direction quickly as possible.
I think I'm going to add to that. I feel like the language of seeking safe bets is indicative that the organization isn't comfortable with experiments or bets that don't pay out. And maybe that's one of the key takeaways is how do you get, maybe in a small part of the organization, the opportunity to try things and have them not work and use that as something that can help shift that mindset away from we need to do this because it's a safe bet.
Awesome. Well, thank you for the conversation as always, Dave. And if folks would like to reach out, they can at feedback at definitelymaybeagile.com or check out our website.
Peter, until next time.
Great, thanks. You've been listening to Definitely Maybe Agile, the podcast where your hosts, Peter Madison and David Sharrett, focus on the art and science of digital, agile, and DevOps at scale.